Well, ho ho ho, and welcome to Happy Times and Places, a festively and positively inclined Doctor Who episode commentary podcast in which I, Toby Haydock, banish the humbug in order to celebrate a Doctor Who episode which I commentate along to whilst trying to guess my special guest's favourite things about it.
Hi Toby, Jason Thompson here. Thank you very much for inviting me to be part of your marvellous Happy Times and Places podcast. I shall add it to my list of podcasts that you can hear me on, should you be so inclined, which include Hamster with a Blunt Penknife with the wonderful Joe Ford, who gave me my first break in podcasting, so thank you to Joe. I've also recently done A Kettle and Some String with Dave Rennie. I've made one or two appearances on Trap One, and if I may do a shameless plug for my own podcast as well, which I'm afraid has nothing to do with Doctor Who, you can also hear me with a good friend of mine, Steve Alexander, in Robots in Your Eyes, a podcast looking at vintage cartoons through the eyes of people way older than the intended target audience. You can also find me on Twitter at Jason_JTT, and if you would like to hear me in other things, I was also, some years ago, involved in a fan audio production series of Planet Scaro audios, which is also available on Twitter. You'll find them at PS Audios, in which I played, among other characters, the Master, making my debut in a story called Christmas Spirits, which is appropriate for this, because today we are looking at A Christmas Carol. Not the Charles Dickens penned tale, but the Stephen Moffat penned Christmas special from 2010. I love A Christmas Carol. I was sceptical when I saw the first announcement of it, because Doctor Who has always been somewhat shameless in showing its influence. Some of its stories are very clear influences, but this time we'd actually lifted the title as well, and I thought that was possibly going a bit on the nose, so I was prepared to be disappointed, irritated, one of those angry fans who takes to Twitter or Facebook immediately afterwards to say what a travesty it was, instead of which I thoroughly enjoyed that hour of television, and it has become, I think, my favourite of all the Christmas episodes of Doctor Who. So, I've already watched it, you watch it, comment on it, and come back later and I will tell you my 5 favourite things about A Christmas Carol.
Well, my thanks to Jason and welcome to the podcast. And it is because of A Hamster with a Blunt Penknife, which he mentioned, which is an excellent podcast with the, as he mentioned, excellent Joe Ford at the helm, that I'm minded to do A Christmas Carol this time around, because I recently partook in A Hamster with a Blunt Penknife podcast, the remit of which was to have a sort of face-off between the different Christmas specials, consign some to the bin until we got to the ultimate and best Christmas special. And a surprise eviction in the early stages was this one, A Christmas Carol. Now, I have to admit, going into that podcast, that edition, slightly unprepared. Not unprepared. You know, it's as I said, when I'm used to podcasting, I'm used to being sort of positive and not sort of considering the things I might not like about a story. So I hadn't been particularly minded to be in a critical zone when considering Doctor Who and broadcasting about it. So this loomed, this podcast, but I wanted to do it because Joey is a lovely fellow, and it's nice to do any sort of form of Christmas broadcast. I know that from the experience of presenting the Seventh Dimension on Radio 4 Extra. I always get happy when the idea of being in people's houses at Christmas. It's a great privilege to broadcast at Christmas. So for various reasons I did this, even though I didn't really like the idea of having to be mean about things, and also because I'm not particularly strong, I don't think, on the new series. I've watched them as a punter. I've read about them in Doctor Who magazine and whatever comes out, but I'm not, I've not sort of dove deep, and I don't have the sort of nuggets at my disposal about the third extra from the left that I might have on a classic Who. So anyway, I kind of went in going, right, well, it's easy. I'll get rid of that one, and I'll know to get rid of that one. And a quite easy one for me to get rid of was A Christmas Carol. Now, what I hadn't anticipated was that, because it was a numbers game, was that some of my fellows would be getting rid of it too, and so it would be a surprise eviction early on in the process. By all means, I don't want to give the whole game away of that podcast, so go to A Hamster with a Blunt Penknife and listen to what Joey and I and the others get up to. But the point is, I've been mulling over that ever since, because it was a shock eviction. It made me think, have I made a mistake there? And I felt guilty. I don't like being responsible for consigning something to oblivion, even in a fun podcast. And it made me sort of consider why I'd got rid of it. The reason I'd sort of got rid of it was because my main takeaway from this was perhaps Jason's takeaway, if you can have such a thing, his pre-takeaway, his as he approached the episode, was that it's on the nose, was the phrase I very much thought of. It doesn't do anything with A Christmas Carol. It does A Christmas Carol. Now, of course, yes, it adds space fish and Star Trek spoof and all that sort of stuff to it, but it's the story follows what happens in your actual Christmas Carol. And also, I think I am so timey-wimey averse. I'm sure we will get into this as I do it, but I always think it's a mistake to play too much with the time element of Doctor Who, because that's what Bill and Ted did, and when Bill and Ted did it, it did it as a joke, and that's because it is inherently ridiculous, and you just keep travelling back in time until you got the outcome that you wanted, if that's how time and space works in your programme. Whereas in Doctor Who, why can't you travel back and stop that person you love dying? I just can't. Okay, move on. Why can't you travel back in time and stop Gallifrey being destroyed? You just can't. Okay, move on. If suddenly you can, we've got issues, we've got problems. Although Moffat has explained that very well in Doctor Who magazine, and I know that a couple of the DVD extras with River Song about how memories are fragmented and all of that is very convincing and very well put. It's just so it's an instinctive as much as an intellectual aversion, and it's a dogmatic one, I have to admit. It's my initial position on time travel, and even though it's been justified and artfully done within the show, that initial instinct, that initial aversion remains stubbornly embedded within me, especially if I'm to just vaguely think about stories that I like and don't like and go, right, well, if I've got to think of the however many Christmas specials there are, and I've got to try and save some and get rid of some, which ones am I going to save and which ones am I going to get rid of? And this was easy in that regard, because I remember thinking at the time, well, if he could travel back in time and stop something happening, why didn't he travel back in time and stop the spaceship taking off? Why did he try and change a man's entire personality and meddle with his history, rather than just fix a fault on a spaceship, or make them see the weather report or whatever? I can hear you saying, because then there'd be no story. I know, but if you make such a meal of time travel, you have to then, and you put it front and center, you then have those questions asked. Whereas if you ignore it and brush it under the carpet and just say, this is how we get to and from the stories, you don't have those questions asked so much. Although, in my experience, the not we still ask them, and then you could go, it just doesn't. He just can't, if you don't place time travel front and center. I think there was that. I think there was that my taste inclines more to, if I imagine a Christmas special, I imagine kind of, lots of guns and action and that kind of thing. It just seems to me more what a bums on seats Christmas special is, rather than, even though Christmas Carol is as Christmassy as you get, I don't know, I'm not sure I can rationalize that one. It's just more in my head, I imagine a sort of bells and whistles thing rather than the presiding image of this for me is, two men in a room, two very good men in a very good room, doing very good acting, which to me, and I know it's not that because I've actually watched it back in preparation for this, and to just to make me see how guilty I did feel having done that. I mean, I felt bad during the podcast, and as I say, immediately I knew I was wrong. So all of this stuff that I've just said is me trying to rationalise where I come to this from, which is one where I remember loving it at the time on the Christmas day as intended, as Moff intended, and I would have rewatched it a few times at that time, but it's never one I've rushed back to. And as I say, I think I don't really watch Christmas specials outside of the Christmas period either, because it's in the same reason that I had my first mince pie not that long ago. Have I had a Brussels sprout? We have had a Brussels sprout a couple of days ago, but I tend to try and save all of that stuff for Christmas, because if you have it at any other time of the year, it doesn't feel quite so special. I'm quite happy that there are some things that are just for Christmas time, which give you mental associations with Christmas, which aid the Christmas feeling and the Christmas spirit. So I quite enjoy all of that you won't see tinsel in my house in March, and nor will you see a Brussels sprout or a mince pie or even a Cadbury's Celebration. Is it Cadbury's Celebration? Whoever makes it. No, Mars. It doesn't matter. Nobody's giving me any. I'm not being paid to advertise. So listen, I hope you're only listening to this. If you're listening to this in July, then you're awful. If not, season's greetings to you all, and let us, as is appropriate at Christmas time, watch Doctor Who's Christmas Carol in 3, 2, 1. It's a beautiful shot. I love those clouds around the planet. It's a great opening with very loud music, which I'm trying to... Oh, can I do it on this? So here we have a lovely sort of Star Trek-y spoof with Pookie Cannell is the name of that actress and writer, who I first saw in a thing called... Oh, what's it called? Is that a gag that the Geordie LaForge navigator, who's got a funny eye thing on, says, I can't see? Because, of course, Geordie LaForge can't see because he is blind. So I think that's a gag. And here's I think this is another reason, because when I started watching this, I don't like this they're dressed up and being sexy stuff, because I'm not wild about there being sex in Doctor Who, full stop, but it's a bit childish for me, and it sounds like I'm being my own bar humbug, perhaps. What we need is the ghost of Christmas present, past and future to come and visit me and to stop me being such an old stick in the mud. But I don't know. I think I've said this before. My feeling with Doctor Who is that it does the stuff that other programmes don't do, and it doesn't do some of the stuff that other programmes do. That's a brilliant shot, and the camera very much likes Karen Gillan, and that's a great pre-credits crash into her, and I'm watching it on a big screen, and it looks absolutely fantastic. But I am averse to that sexy sex stuff in Doctor Who. The implication that they might have been up to something is one thing, but then the implication that they might have been dressing up, and it's not kinky, is it really? But it's I think it opens too much of a door onto that for me, for a family show. And listen, I'm not averse. I've got a filthy sense of humour not scatological. I don't like being too physical or whatever. But I'm a swearer. I'm a grown up. But in Doctor, that's a wonderful shot as well. Excellent special effects, and I do like this mixture of period chocolate box Dickensy Christmas in a spacey setting. And there's lots of kids in this, I seem to recall, who look like perfect children Christmas kids. And of course you've got the people with the goggles as well, which was explained later. But this is an excellent Christmassy world that has been created. And you make advantage of the fact that your guest star is Michael Gambon, who was voiceover man. I remember my uncle being very disappointed that I think he'd done for the voiceover for the privatisation of the water companies, and when Thatcher sold off all our assets, and he was like, that's Michael Gambon's voice. I'm disappointed with him, because he is an excellent voiceover man. And I note that his name is not on the opening credits, whereas some later Christmas guest stars get them on. It must be something to do with the contracts for the regulars or something. But anyway, it seems now a missed opportunity that you don't get, even if not on the opening credits, during his opening narration. He's got such an excellent face. He's excellent casting. Tim Plester as the servant there, I will mention later. But we've got this bevy as well. You've got Steve North, who was in London's Burning, which nobody talks about now. It was the highest viewed show at its time. And it had a load of actors who you don't see in anything anymore. I mean, James Hazeldine is dead, but Jimmy Marcus, who's in Underworld and Invasion of the Dinosaurs, Sean Blowers from Dragonfire, Glenn Murphy, none of whom have sort of gone on to be used particularly, but I suppose that happened to actors from the Bill as well. But anyway, they were big actors in a big show. Richard Pearce, who's never done Doctor Who, but anyway. And then a couple of lines from Meg Wynne Owen, who has since sadly died, who was such a star in Upstairs, Downstairs. But recently, in fact, she was on last year's In Memoriam Christmas video, 2022's In Memoriam video, as a result of her death, but also the fact that she had succumbed to dementia and was robbed and taken advantage of by somebody who was supposed to be looking after her, and ended up sort of penniless and reliant on an institution. And it was a grim story, whereas the last I thought of Meg Wynne Owen was being quite happy that she was still acting, but also quite disappointed that an actress of such caliber from such a big show, Upstairs Downstairs, got 3 lines in one scene in a Doctor Who, albeit a Christmas Doctor Who. But it just goes to show what a parlous business this can be, and that nobody should take success in it for granted, because even that can be fleeting. Because anyway, she's excellent in Upstairs Downstairs. I love the Doctor's entrance down the chimney. I really like Matt Smith's mixture of sort of anarchy and incompetence. He comes in. That's what he does well. He's a bit like Troughton. He takes control whilst not actually fully being in control. Other Doctors, will come in and be a bit of an oncoming storm. This guy's an oncoming shambles, and the fact that he's covered in soot adds to that. And Matt Smith can get away with being sort of, say, naughty, and yet still be sort of scatty and professorial. It's a nice mix, and he's great. I mean, this on the page must have been quite huge, but he keeps it interesting. And I love the fact that he's taken her in, but he points without looking at her first. He's excellent, Matt Smith. I think he's absolutely Doctor Who in a nutshell. And there's so much in that speech. There's so much going on. There's childhood innocence. There's that unconscious taking it all in. there's battiness, but there's a sense of authority and menace as well. And I like I like the fact that there's also a sort of contempt there that he's covering with fun. He's covering his real feelings in a way with this sort of performance. And of course the fact that he's wrong as well, and that's the wounded pride Troughton thing, a bit like when Troughton mucks up the thing that Zoe does cleverly, the Croton's teaching machine, and yeah, the Doctor is the hero, the Doctor is in charge, the Doctor's really intelligent, but he actually mucks that up, and I kind of like that. Gambon is perfect casting for easily bored, I suppose. And I love the fact that he has this audience of this hapless family who he gives a little bit of Christmas cheer to by just coming and saying what nobody else would dare to say to this man. And I always like that when there's cruel authority that the Doctor shows absolute contempt for, and a lack of intimidation by. And actually now has a big bit of steel. It's seeing two great actors facing off against each other, and it's nice when somebody's not impressed by the Doctor either, because I think sometimes the show can get a bit carried away with with the Doctor's status as the hero of the show. It's quite nice when because I was brought up a time when the Doctor Who always arrived somewhere and was considered to be a spy for 2 episodes. I think that's excellent. The image of the man about to strike a child, which is stark. I mean, even more stark now than it would have been when I was growing up. I mean, we were smacked about, It was normal when I was growing up. It was phased out. Schools stopped doing it when I was still at school, but parents weren't averse to socking you. This is great. This is this shows what the Doctor has taken in, and I like the fact that it's kind of illustrated by the director as well. It's a real underlining of the Doctor effortlessly. This is why the Doctor is often so many counts ahead of his adversaries. Is that he comes in and soaks it all in, and his brain is whirring. But he's got a sort of slightly insolent authority too, Matt Smith, which is actually more Tom Baker than Patrick Troughton. I know Joe from Hamster with a Blunt Penknife is not a great fan of Matt Smith, which will have me beat Joe to death. I've just realised, I don't know why Joe has made me think of John Nathan Turner, but I had a dream this morning that I went to see John Nathan Turner, and I sent a friend of mine away who'd wanted to come to the party, and I made him go away and said, no, because I'm actually working, it's not a party, I'm doing some work with John Nathan Turner. So I made my friend go away who'd wanted to meet John Nathan Turner, and then I went into John Nathan Turner's room and everyone sort of sniggered. There was a sort of bit of a snigger because I said, I'm here to see John. And a young man's face emerged from under the blanket. And then another did, and then another did. And they were sort of like, do you want to stay or do you want to go? And I was like, maybe I'll come back later. And I sort of exited with sort of guffaws and contempt. I was ejected from the room in a sort of, I felt like I was surplus to requirements. What a peculiar what a peculiar bunch of things to have happened in a dream. Anyway, as peculiar as flying fish, but this is a lovely idea, and it does feel quite sort of, Doctor Who should be a strange perversion of reality, and the Christmas ones should be, like a Christmas that only Doctor Who can do, and fish in clouds is a beautifully Doctor Who-y thing without it being a thing we've seen before. So it's one of those very good things that is absolutely Doctor Who without it having been done in Doctor Who. I do like the Star spoof that we see. I could have seen more than that. I've always liked Pookie Cannell, who is an excellent actress with an excellent name. Real name is Joanna, I think. And I think Quentin Letts wrote an article about her in the Daily Mail or one of the papers that he writes for. I think it was the Mail, about how he'd been at Cambridge with her, and she was going to be a star, Pookie Cannell, and has ended up being somebody who just turns up in the odd thing. And he was musing on the sort of cruel nature of acting. Now, I think Pookie Cannell's had an excellent career, but the way that newspapers write up acting careers is, unless you're really, really famous, you're a bit part player, which is not true. She's not a bit part player here. She was in a lot of the publicity as a sort of guest star, and it's a very decent role on primetime television. It's not a bit part, but you're either an Oscar nominee or you're a failure with the way that acting credit careers are written up in papers. But anyway, it was it's still nonetheless an interesting musing on how acting careers turn out, and how really, really, really talented actors don't necessarily become stars. And that's something that preys upon all actors of whether you're actually going to sustain a career, and if you are, if you're going to get offered the sort of parts that you want, deserve, all of that. So I mention that because it's interesting further reading for the viewer of A Christmas Carol, if you can sully yourself with the writing of Quentin Letts, who I think is a largely odious, dreadful man, a political sketch commentator who's been promoted to the theatre critic of the paper to prove what disdain they actually have for theatre. But there we go. Let's not get into that. It is a horrible rag, which I find sullies the national conversation, so I don't want to give it too much. It's ill-natured. I don't give it too much attention. But I do want to give attention to Tim Plester, who's not in the episode anymore, who plays the main servant, who is, again, an actor of great experience and promise. An excellent, often comic supporting actor. He looks not unlike Arthur Darvill. They both have very similar physiognomies, and Plester's got that slightly sort of puckered mouth with thin lips that make him a sort of quirky comedy player. And he's very good in Afterlife, the Ricky Gervais show. But he was also, talking of actors who have careers that might have gone in a different direction, he was down to the last two for Mackenzie Crook's part, Gareth, in The Office. I read an interview with Mackenzie Crook where he mentioned this, where Mackenzie Crook was sort of musing on what might have happened, and Mackenzie Crook and Tim Plester have worked together and things. I saw them in a short film about vampires, I think. Anyway, they are both similar sort of spindly comedy character players of the modern generation. And so Tim Plester could have been Gareth in The Office, and what would have happened to his career then? I mean, his part in Doctor Who is not a reflection of his career, because he's played excellent parts and good leading or hefty guest parts in a lot of shows. So I think they're very lucky to get him in Doctor Who to play not many lines servant, and it's still a reasonable part. You'd want to if you audition for it, you want to get it, and obviously, if it's good enough for Tim Plester, it's good enough for a lot of actors. But you probably haven't registered him particularly in this, and he's an actor well worth noting. But not anymore, because he's gone, because The Servants won the lottery, which is a trick Doctor Who has. That's a time travel trick the Doctor's done quite a lot. Although, as discovered in the Star Beast, it is easily reversed. But that was used as a sign of something the meddling monk would do naughtily, wasn't it? Was to put some money in the bank and travel forward in time and collect the compound interest. The fact that you would use your time travel skills to make money was seen as some sort of pesky thievery, whereas cheating the lottery is seen as a thing that the Doctor can do to reward somebody nice, or to get some inconvenient servants or school teachers. School reunion happens as well, doesn't it? Out of the way. But anyway, Matt Smith does all this stuff well, and this is A Kid in Pyjamas, I think, is a lovely Doctor Who-y Christmassy thing. I mean, Moffat likes his kids, doesn't he, in Doctor Who? I did the Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe recently. That's got a couple of kids in it. The two kids that just a lot of wavy lines. I like the fact that that's a very good joke. That he says he's a responsible person, and the line, and that's what screws up the psychic paper. The production design here was lovely as well. I think Michael Pickwoad is made for this mixture of. I like it when alien planets are not, futuristic and funky, but when they're sort of wooden panels, and the Hinchcliffe era is very like that, where they plunder the past to create the future, or rather timelessness. And this is great. That's great, having the shark there in the foreground, and fog is always atmospheric, but fog with fish in it is that works very well. Again, when thinking about my aversion to this, I was thinking, I think possibly a more communicative alien threat rather than a dialogue-free fog shark, and as I say, maybe sort of more modern hardware, full on, the excrements hitting the fan kind of Christmas, or the disaster movie type thing of Voyage of the Damned. I mean, there's loads of problems with Voyage of the Damned, I think, structurally and in a couple of areas, and yet I still chose that as my sort of default Christmas episode. Well, in fact, I think the Christmas Invasion may well be my favourite of all. I wasn't allowed to use that. That was not one of the episodes we chose in Joey's podcast. I love the Christmas Invasion, and maybe it's because it was the first one. But I remember when Christmas Invasion came out, thinking, next time they do a Christmas special, they'll get it right, and they'll iron out some of the mistakes of this one. But actually, I think Christmas Invasion, because it's got the whole smorgasbord of possibilities at its disposal, really gets so much of it right. But the general, again, I'm talking just a general feeling and atmosphere now about that, about them all, about all of the Christmas specials. The two kids I was trying to remember are the ones that Jenna Coleman, Clara looks after in Nightmare in Silver and all of those, the ones that nobody likes. And then there's Courtney as well. There's loads of kids in the Moffat era. But a sort of freckly kid in his pyjamas, to me, is a very Christmassy thing, and they're those old-fashioned pyjamas as well. The design helps here to give us the feeling of an old Christmas story from a, Lion the Witch in the Wardrobe kind of, or picture booky kind of story. And he's got his top button done up as well. But yeah, that looks, that sort of that hard yet cozy, musty pyjamas of yore. And I love this score, by the way. I love this piece of music by Murray Gold. I Am the Doctor, isn't it? Oh, this is great. And the effects of the fish, by the way, are superb. He's great, Matt Smith. He's got a searing kind of, his eyes, and he's got a searing intelligence, but the intensity of his eyes, and the wonderful hoodedness of them as well. He's got such a brilliant face, and that slightly sort of skewiff jaw. I'm sure I've quoted Moffat's, he looks like a bad drawing of a handsome man, because those slightly hooded eyes that can be so sad, but also, intense and darting. That's brilliant. What do you eat? In comes a space shark. That's a very good Moffat piece of humour with horror combined. And I do I associate Jaws with Christmas? I don't know, but I certainly associate, the reason I mentioned Voyage of the Damned. Do I mean Voyage of the Damned? Yes. I've sometimes got Voyage of the Damned and Planet of the Dead mixed up, because they go on a voyage and they're a bit damned in Planet of the Dead. There's a shark in my bedroom. Oh, Matt Smith's so good, because he's like a sort of, when pairing him with kids is a good idea, because he's so childlike, and he's sort of like an irresponsible uncle. I remember leaving my two kids in the charge of my brother, when I had to do a show, and my brother kindly said he'd look after them, and said, right, they go to bed at this time, and this, that, the other. And I came back at sort of 10 to midnight, and they were still up, having watched the Transformers movie, and there were Haribo packets all over the floor, and I was like, right, so he wasn't going to put them to bed then. But I think because he's an irresponsible uncle, irresponsible uncles can, mean that you're not necessarily safe, but you're unsafe in a fun way. And isn't that what Doctor Who is? Doctor Who is unsafe in a fun way. Doctor Who is scares that are containable, that are thrilling, that are fun. It's like the televisual equivalent of a roller coaster ride. You do it because you'll be scared, but you'll kind of enjoy it. I mean, I'm not a roller coaster kind of chap, but we were watching something on a roller coaster in a film the other day, and I said, "Shez, I think I don't ever need to do a roller coaster ever again." And she went, "Oh God, yeah, and me." And we were like, "Why do people do that?" People do it because there's a thrill about being taken to the edge of what is safe. People do things that are dangerous. I watched a thing yesterday called The Alpinist, at the suggestion of John Levine, no less. He insisted that I watch it, about a guy who did free climbing up mountains. And there was one of the interviews in that said, a lot of people who do this stuff die, but there's no achievement if there's not a chance when you do it. You could die, and you go, well, my God. And that must be what part of the thrill is, coming, knowing you've been as close to the edge as you can. And Doctor Who is, it's ultimately safe because it's a television program, but it's about provoking the same synapses that actual danger does. Which is, which means it serves a purpose. There is something about the mental workout, the same as something, you watch something romantic to provoke tears, you watch something action-packed or scary to provoke the endorphins and the adrenaline. And this story has the added thing of provoking the sort of the Christmas comfort. Christmas is a time, it should, it's a sort of, it's a mental stock check, isn't it, of the year, where you can kind of, you create an atmosphere that feels sort of comfortable but also slightly melancholic, because it's winter time, or it is in the UK anyway. Apologies to Australian friends who I know enjoy cold white wine on a sunny day in Christmas, and I'm sure that brings its own memories on nostalgia for you. But for me, nostalgia is this. I mean, it's very clever. The people are frozen, but they're not frozen in the way that the people in Alien are, which you could have had, futuristic white sterile pods. These are metal, and they've got rivets, but tellingly also they are frozen. They're clung to by ice. They're frosted, so they're in their own way Christmassy. It's very clever. These sort of subtle, these subtle emphasis. In the production design and everything, and the concept, because Stephen Moffat is very clever of how this evokes Christmas, and this does feel like people sort of walking around in a sort of snowy wood on Christmas Day, but in fact, the forest here is, space coffins with people in suspended animation. That's a very good way of, because Christmas is, because also you remember the lost at Christmas. You remember the people who aren't here either. It is, as I say, it's a sort of mental stock take, which are very important. They're sort of almost MOTs, to sort of go, well, where we are, what needs fixing, what are the things we're still sad about. Let's conjure a bit of happiness as well to try and, to try and act as, medicine for that. Christmas, and some people hate Christmas, and apologies to those if you're one of those listening to this festive thing. I'm afraid I'm a sucker for Christmas, because for me as a kid, which is why I think it's nice having a kid in a Doctor Who Christmas special, whose home life wasn't particularly happy. It was but it wasn't, I was never under threat. It wasn't dangerous or anything like that. But I wasn't a happy kid. Christmas was a time when, well, everyone's going to have to be nice to me today because it's Christmas Day and everything's nice at Christmas, and that generally happened. Generally, as I say, I do have memories. God, I just have a memory of Mum sending me to the fridge to get something, and I'm so terrified of getting things wrong that I open the fridge and you almost can't see in front of you because she's going to get cross if I can't find the thing that she said. And I remember being shouted at and going, "But don't shout at me, it's Christmas. Surely you can't shout at me on Christmas Day." Oh dear. And it's such a minor thing, but my God, it tears you in half when you're a kid, or did me anyway. I wasn't a particularly robust kid. I was anyway. And here we have Catherine Jenkins. I think another reason this has a slight kink for me in my view of it, not a kink as in it's kinky, but a sort of the needle comes off the record a little bit for me in terms of my smooth experience of watching this. It's beautiful imagery. Toby Haynes, the director, as I think made this, visually and the lighting and the color composition, everything is gorgeous. This is beautifully atmospheric. Is we have Catherine Jenkins, a singer, not an actress, a singer, which smacks a little bit of sort of stunt casting, even though if you want somebody who's going to be a beautiful singer, get somebody who's famous for being a beautiful singer. But she's not an actress. I don't think she's bad in this, but they've made a deliberate decision to go for the famous singer. And my wife at the time was a singer called Catherine, who's a very good actress. And I think maybe there was a little bit of they could have cast an actress in this part. But I don't know how I fit. How do I fit? 10 years later, Catherine Jenkins is not quite as big news as she once was. She's still around though, and she seems lovely. How do I feel about the celebrity casting? I don't know, because of course there's part of me that's like, celebrities are appearing in Doctor Who. That's always good. That always makes people talk about it, and it is a weapon in Doctor Who's arsenal is that you get people and you get them playing parts they wouldn't ordinarily play. Some of the great triumphs of Doctor Who have been casting actors against type, or casting actors well known for this thing and putting them in Doctor Who in entirely different circumstances, and that familiarity with them creates a dissonance because of the part that they're playing and the circumstance they've been put in, and that adds to the sort of effect of Doctor Who. But I suppose it's on the nose. Catherine Jenkins, singer, playing this part, singing lady. I don't know. It does seem slightly different from other Doctor Who castings, but then I can't point to anything particularly wrong with her performance. I think she's clearly not as experienced an actor as other performers who've been in Doctor Who. Gambon on there, and she's beautiful as well. Gambon is so good. There's so much that he could do, especially as I'm sure somebody told me that for some of this he was earpieced up and fed his lines, because he was such a good actor. He could just turn it on without necessarily being completely across everything that he was doing. Now, I don't know if that's 100% true, but other things I've been told about Gambon, on stage and stuff, is that he's quite a naughty actor, and I'm sure somebody told me, who was it? Somebody was in The Caretaker with Gambon, and at one point he said during a matinee to one of the actors, "Oh, F it, I'm going to do the next bit in Swahili," and then just did a page of talking absolute nonsense, and still got a massive round of applause at the end, because he was such a good actor. It's an illusion, isn't it? It's illusory. It's a contrick. Acting is a contrick. This is very clever. During all this lovely stuff, there's an ominous countdown, which is very cleverly woven into the tragedy of the story, which is brilliant, because you think it's going one way and you go, but it has to be there for a reason, and blah blah blah. Anyway, yeah, very good. it's brilliantly structured. This actually, Stephen Moffat is so good at structure. So that when you think it's going one way, or you think, you've stumbled upon the bit that's nice, there's a melancholy subtext, as there is to Christmas itself. Christmas is bittersweet, but again, it's a sort of enjoyable bittersweet, as the great man said. Sad is happy for deep people, or whatever. There is something exorcising about the warm glow in the snowy darkness is conflicting, as is the warmth of the familiarity and happiness of Christmas, with the melancholy at the stocktake of who we've lost and what we're missing, and another year gone, another step, as I approach 50, another step towards death, and all of that conflicting stuff is, again, it's good. It's a good mental workout, but it's also a good example of why we avail ourselves of stories and of the arts, because they provoke conflicting and different memories in us and thoughts in us. And this is very funny. And sometimes when Stephen Moffat does things where people endure lengthy time travel excursions that we only see the highlights of, I sort of think it's a bit of a cheat, that a suggestion of time spent without us, the audience. But I think this really, really works, and of course it allows us the recast. And as anyone's got kids knows, suddenly they go from being little boys to grown young men within the blink of an eye. So that works too. I love this TARDIS design. I love the pull down monitor. Yeah, and she's. Oh, that's nice though. That's very sweet. That, again, Stephen Moffat is very good at those, of doing we think of him as the sort of sarky, smart aleck who's good at clever structure, but he's also very good at placing a line or placing a sentiment within a scene that just tugs at the heart, or just makes you catch your throat when you think about it, and is very good at that sort of emotional placement. And I think he suffers in our eyes because he's so clever and so funny, that I think he can sometimes be written off as this, man of structure and conceit, as in, a story conceit rather than conceitedness. Although I think he's often mistaken for being a bit sort of cocky as well, because he's so good at quips and sarkiness. Whereas in my experience, he's not actually like that at all. But I think his sense of humour means that he can come across as that. It was nice to see that the long multicoloured scarf make an appearance as well during the montage. If it wasn't quite a montage, was it? But the sort of highlights of the Christmas visits. This is very sweet. Although she did know him as a child, I think that's slightly dodgy. But dodgy Catherine Jenkins. But we get another kid. Another Christmas urchin, which I don't know why a young male urchins so Christmassy. I think because they're such a stock of, particularly I think, a Dickens kind of tale, and this is evoking the whole Dickens thing. So yeah, you want a slightly mucky faced child. And placing the Doctor within a family setting. Again, he's so much fun, Matt Smith's Doctor. He's like, if you're a kid, he's like a sort of guilty pleasure, but because he's so incompetent at the normal things, this is what I like, which you don't really see in any other Doctor to quite the extent. I love the bit where he spits out the wine in the lodger, but because because he's somebody who's so clever at space things, he hasn't got time to remember, what the difference between a giraffe and a cupboard is or whatever. And I really like that, and especially when they place it in the comfort of kids. I mean, these magic tricks with all these mistakes, you actually kind of believe this doctor could be making a mistake, but you also believe, but it's just a mistake that's covering up the fact that he's actually going to get it right, but it's still a mistake. And that's great, because what it means is the doctor could be either thing at any time. He could be spectacularly right, which is going to get us out of trouble, or spectacularly wrong, which means we're dead. But that never undermines the fact that the doctor is this benevolent space wizard who's brilliant. But because he's always those things. Yeah, he bumps into things and all of that, but he's still the person you trust the most, and yet he's not to the extent that you're ever wholly comfortable. And it's done in such a charm. I think it really works. It enables you to have a fallible hero without making the hero stupid. And yet he does do stupid things, but it's a stupidness in the same way that very, very, very clever people might have bad social skills, or very, very, very clever people, very, very erudite people might not have heard of Take That or whatever. It always comes at a cost. Great, there aren't many people who are handsome and intelligent and cool. And if you are all of those things, jolly well done to you. So I like the fact that they have Matt Smith being sort of incompetent around a kid, because kids quite like that sort of going, "Oh no, you're wrong," and it's an egoless adult that allows themselves. It's always fun watching an adult who so allows a kid to outwit them or outsmart them, and the adult most of the time actually knows that they're allowing the kid to do it, but they're allowing the kid that moment of victory, that moment to feel good. Whereas actually with the doctor here, it's not necessarily deliberate. Again, that's the beautiful thing, is that either outcome could be true. And I think that works perfectly with Matt Smith's Doctor, and with Stephen Moffat's conception and realization of the Doctor as somebody that is so clever. He's actually he's not learnt some of the social niceties or basic things about being human, which again then helps to emphasize his alien quality as well. I think it's a really smart depiction of the Doctor. And it needs this now, because the episode seems to be going a certain way. Dr. Marilyn marrying Marilyn Monroe. It's just silly, isn't it? And here's the Doctor not quite getting the kid. This is the doc. I like this in the Doctor, where the Doctor again doesn't quite get the romantic stuff, even though he's about to marry Marilyn Monroe. It's not because he's cool and sexy. It's because he's a bit of an idiot who doesn't quite get the kissing thing. Again, it's kind of having your cake and eating it, or having your cake and snogging it. But it kind of works. It's taking apparently contradictory things and making them marry together, which is harder than it looks and sounds. Lawrence Belcher, by the way, who played the young Kazran, who's not in it now, but I didn't mention at the time, he's very good. Was in the ensemble of the recent West End To Kill a Mockingbird, I noticed, so still going. And I haven't mentioned in the spaceship, Danny Horn. I haven't seen do much. I hope he's well. I hope he's working. It's a nice part for him, this, isn't it? But unlike some young emerging actors cast by Andy Pryor in key roles, thinking Felicity Jones, Kerry Mulligan, Andrew Garfield, he hasn't gone and taken over the world, but he's still working. I think he's still about. But and he might well be in a program I don't watch, but I think I keep my ear to ground and occasionally look people up. But and he's good in this. He's very good in this. yeah, and he looks good in his garb as well. But yes, he's why was I mentioning Danny? Oh, because I was going to mention the people in the spaceship, because I might forget next time, because one of them's Leo Bill, who I saw in A Woman Killed with Kindness, was it called, at the National Theatre, playing a posh lord type, and he's appeared in loads of stuff in telly. He's the guy with the slick back hair, the navigator, the pilot, whatever he is, and he's done loads and loads of telly. I think he's a friend of a friend as well. I think he's friends with a couple of mates of mine on Facebook. But he's one of those actors that you always sort of notice when he pops up in stuff, and could well have been expected to play a sort of slightly more prominent part. But again, it's a decent enough part in a Doctor Who Christmas special. And I've talked, actor spotting. I've talked over the big twist here, which is that countdown was that she's only got a certain amount of days left her. We don't know this yet, do we? No. So she's told him. He hasn't told the Doctor, and he's sort of rejected him. Now, that's drama, you see. That's somebody knowing something, but not telling the other person, and saying something else instead because they either can't confront the emotion of it, or they're doing it for the sake of the other person. That's where I find drama, where people just sit around and tell everybody what they think. Much less satisfying than this sort of stuff. It's entirely plausible why young Kazran does not tell the Doctor the truth, which leaves the Doctor in the dark, which leaves the audience in the dark, which means we're still working, we're still guessing, which makes us have a slight sympathy for Kazran, but also explains why he still ends up the man that he ends up. Now it's not because he's inherently cruel, but it's not because his dad has been mean to him. It's because actually he found happiness, which has only been introduced to him by his encounters with the Doctor. But even so, fate is still conspiring to say, well, no, because what you don't know, Doctor Who, is that he's found happiness, but that happiness will, by its nature, because of the person that he's fallen in love with, be short-lived, because he's fallen in love with somebody who has only a limited amount of time left to live. And again, that's the Christmas comfort, love, the people we love, comfort. And indeed, Christmas is all about, I'm considering going to see my family this year, and my mum is past 80 now, and one of the things you say, and you say it quite blatantly, you said, well, we should go and do the family this year because, my mum's 80, there won't be that many. And that seems an extraordinary thing to say. It's very pragmatic about what would be a great loss in your life. But it's very true. You have to go, well, come on, kids, your Ran's not going to be around forever. So make her feel good, make her feel special. So it does have that. And sometimes, and we do it at Christmas because we've been meaning to do this all bloody year. We've been threatening to go and see my family for all year, and so we have to do it at Christmas because we failed, and because Christmas is a time when you do make an extra effort. So that's why I think the placing of Catherine Jenkins in the cryo chamber is so very clever, because it also ties in with the fact, well, there are certain people we only see that once a year, even though they're desperately important to us and we enjoy being with them. For some reason, we only could, because of the way we let real life get in the way, we only contrive to be with them on this special season of the year. So that's a very clever storytelling device that also makes it very apt for Christmas. This is excellent stuff, and I was right to feel ashamed of myself for casting this into the ignominy of relegation in the Hamster podcast. This is a beautifully haunting image. The people on the ship singing a Christmas carol, and they're not ghosts, but they seem ghostly. A ghostly bevy of carolers at your door. That is a beautifully Doctor Who-y thing, and of course a beautifully Doctor Who-y at Christmas thing. Beautiful lighting as well, wonderful atmospherics thanks to the colour palette and the shadows and the light, the different shades of light. Look, the slightly warmer light on Karen Gillan, the slightly amber glow that she has, the much colder, icy bathing on Gambon's brilliant face, because of course they're in different places. That's a very clever, subtle touch, because she's been, holographically beamed in from elsewhere, somewhere with a different lighting hue, which means that even when she's out of focus there, that's a brilliant shot with him in clear sort of portrait focus and her slightly out of focus. But that sort of exacerbates the fact that she's on a slightly different colour palette as well, which nonetheless complements the scene around her. It's beautifully, beautifully done. And that reflection in the glass. Oh, that's so well done. Well done, Toby Haynes. Beautiful work. Oh, bless him, and he's so sad. And this is what, this is. I mean, it is sort of Dickens, isn't it? But it's it is an important thing to remember, and because it's so in these times where we are so angry. Oh, and by the way, here we have Amy, being the ghost of Christmas Present, where the ghost of Christmas. It's not quite as obvious as other stuff that we just saw. A film called Spirited, which has Ghost of Christmas Past, Ghost of Christmas Present, Ghost of Christmas Future. Muppets Christmas Carol does the same, where they are actually characters, and you have quite a lot of fun with the costume and the feel of those characters. For us, the Ghost of Christmas Past, Present, and Future are in this Doctor Who are. They go slightly less to town with those, and in fact use our regulars for that purpose. And it's quite smart, because you'd almost forgotten about Amy and Rory. You do get the impression that they're only available for a couple of days filming and to bookend the show. Nice, good. Pookie Cornell gets a few lines here, which is good. He's so mean. And again, the lighting within this scene is very, very, very good. She's in a different light there because she's bathed in the red alert glow. But yes, so having our regulars as the ghosts of Christmas, representing the ghost of Christmas present, having Rory and Amy doing that, sort of comes as a surprise, even though it shouldn't be, because we've kind of forgotten about them, even though we know that they're there lurking as a presence and in danger. But I think you don't expect them to become part of this Kazran storytelling, because they're the ones in danger. They're the ones who are, noises off, waiting to be saved. So then to bring them in is a clever use of the characters and the format that nonetheless manages to be a surprise, and also gives Amy and Karen Gillan something to do, which is good. And I like this because I don't care. Yeah. That's really good. He does that so well. And there is something about, understanding that people that are cruel and do cruel and unpleasant things. It's a very human observation to make, that they're not irredeemable, but that they are broken. Now, that could be foolish. That could be saccharine to sort of go, that actually some people might be evil and might be bad, but I think you have to cling to the hope that that's not the case. And actually it means that when somebody does something bad to you, it is hugely emotional, this scene, actually. It's because it's a horrible image, and the kid there, looks genuinely feared, and the older man is, abject, and Gambon is so good, but the harshness of that potential physical act, and I'm glad they, you don't actually see that, but it's enough there. There's enough history there, and the fact he's got that horrible cane as well with the metal end, but that slap across the chops he was considering giving would have been extremely painful. And there's nothing worse than the crimson heat of sadness and pain on a child's cheeks from either hot flesh and salt tears, or stinging flesh from physical contact. But I think that is where Moffat's genius, I think, is used to its best. Is that you go, how's he gonna get through to Gambon? How is the ghost of future gonna penetrate this angry carapace? And the twist that Moffat gives is, no, this is the ghost of Christmas future, and I'm showing it to the kid. I find that's such a clever piece of writing, such a clever twist on the format, and yet it's hiding in plain sight. It's Ghost of Christmas Past, Present, Future. It's a reversal, and you're showing the kid the old man he becomes, which I think is beautiful. And Christmas, bittersweet, melancholy. Oh yeah, I found that extremely emotional, even whilst having to throw in trivia and observations to you. It's brilliant. It's utterly brilliant. I will never. I hope it doesn't languish in my head in future as one of going, it's just two people talking in a room, that and the sort of chocolate boxy time travel stuff. And of course, you don't get a happy ending without sacrifice. Christmas is about love and loss. It's about stock taking those we love and stock taking those we don't have anymore, or those we might not have for much longer. And it evokes all of that. I mean, it's funny. One of the reasons I think I like Voyage of the Damned is because one of the films we watched at Christmas. Well, we watched a lot of disaster movies at Christmas. I always associate Christmas with the Poseidon Adventure and the Towering Inferno and all of that. And Gene Hackman. I'd forgotten the first time. I remember when we watched the Poseidon Adventure again at Christmas, being shocked because I knew I'd seen it, and I remember Gene Hackman being at the wheel. But I'd somehow managed to, spoilers Ed, by the way, managed to block out the fact that he dies, because my young mind was like, well, no, the hero won't have died. He's the hero. He's the main guy. And so I remember another time watching it later going, oh my God, he dies. And even though Poseidon Adventure isn't a Christmas movie, it is a kind of oh no, it is. There's a Christmas tree in it, isn't there? Well, I associate it with Christmas anyway. Let's not turn Poseidon Adventure into a Die Hard thing. Was it released at Christmas? I don't know, but it was certainly shown on telly at Christmas a lot, and there's definitely a Christmas tree in it because people try and climb up it and it collapses, doesn't it? And he makes a virtue of the fact that you've got a singer by making, and he's so good at coming up with a sci-fi reason, resonating and all of that sort of thing, that means that the singing becomes part of the resolution, that ties in the ice crystals that aren't just there as sort of window dressing to create this as a is quite a neat Earth-like but slightly different because it's an alien planet environment. And he makes a virtue of all of the things that he's created to build this world to help with the resolution that also ties in with the character. It's beautifully, neatly, it's excellently structured, it's superb. And this is my own Ghost of Christmas Past, making me a changed man, and showing me that I was perhaps wrong to be cruel and dismissive of a Doctor Who Christmas special. As I say, I didn't dislike it. It's just one that didn't particularly... That's Leo Bill there. And I do like how they've sort of for these short scenes on the spaceship really gone to almost make it a sort of spoof of the Star Treks. It's kind of, again, you want things painted in slightly broader colours on Christmas Day. So if you're going to have a stricken spaceship, make it one that is kind of got modern Star Trek's DNA threaded through it. He's so And this could be creepy because it's an old man and a beautiful young woman, but Gambon is so good. And that's the thing about him, doing it in Swahili, and if he was having the lines fed to him on occasion, he was such a good actor that he could... Well, acting is faking it, even and to fake it, you perhaps have to believe it inwardly. And to some, that takes a lot of digging deep, but maybe Gambon didn't have to dig deep, or he could dig deep just, with one very quick mental spade. What? I don't know, but do you know what I mean? The reason he was such a good actor was because he could produce what he produced, however he did it, whether he dug really deep and it was really hard work, or he could do it really easily. But it seems that he was such an... Maybe it was because it was later in life he'd got so much experience, or maybe he was just that damn good that he could do it with a lot less effort. That's not to undermine, that's not to say it's not hard work, but it just came to him easier. Like a footballer that can produce magnificent footwork. It takes hard work, it takes skill, it takes practice, but also some people it just takes innate genius. I love Matt Smith doing Eskimo kissing the snowman's carrot nose. I don't like that. Anyway, I'm an old stick in the mud, aren't I? Am I getting old? You are getting old, Toby. But I don't think I liked it at the time. I do like the dynamic between this team, though, as well. They're obviously... Because he's not... It's very... because it could seem like a ensemble trio of people all around the same age. But he does seem different enough from them that they're not mates. It's not a gang. It's definitely the Doctor and the other two. Well, actually, the Doctor and her and him. It's actually quite a clever hierarchy of characters, even though you love them all and they're all important parts of the show. The Doctor is still, he's still the Doctor, even though I do like the dynamic that they all have between them, which is sort of gangy and nice. And I'm liking the snow, which for once isn't dead bodies or heat loss in the atmosphere or whatever. It's your actual snow, halfway out of the dark. Oh, I got quite emotional at that, and I do like a white Christmas. I do like a white Christmas. I'm a bit of a romantic at heart, and I make no apologies for that. Because you can be cynical. I have a child who is going through a I hate Christmas phase, and it saddens me. I mean, child, young person now. It saddens me because it's easy to step into the dark. And I think it feels quite good to be to reject the it's quite cool, isn't it, to reject his cup. Oh, ha ha ha, this is the trailer for the next lot. To give way to cynicism. Oh, this is brilliant. Anyway, don't watch the trailer for that. Well, it's part of it, I suppose. And a Fez. This looks so amazing, doesn't it? And filming in America, the show looks absolutely incredible. And I love this piece of music. Saran Jones, I love her. She's great. I do love Marigold's music here, but that desert setting for Doctor Who is so perfect. Yeah, beautiful. I'd watch that. They're all lies. Oh, I love that. Monsters are real. Beautiful. Well done. I don't mind falling hook, line, and sinker for Christmas, even though it's very commercialized and it can be a bit of a fib and all that. I'm not thick. I can see through all of that if I want to. I choose not to. I choose to embrace the fact that there are certain foodstuffs that I treat myself to at this time of year that I could have Stilton in may, but I don't want to. I like to create an occasion of it. I like to fall for the brouhaha. That doesn't make me stupid, because I'm aware that there's a cognitive dissonance that one imposes upon oneself to go, I could sort of go, well, it's unnecessary gluttony when some of the world are starving, and you could be cognizant of that and try and be decent in terms of doing charitable things and being conscious of one's duty in the world to recycle and to give to charity and do all of those things that one does, whilst also it being okay to enjoy yourself and be fine. And we don't waste food here anyway either. Anything leftover cheese gets turned into my New Year macaroni cheese and blah blah blah. And we used to eat turkey sandwiches for about 3 weeks after turkey sandwiches and turkey broth. Is it turkey sandwiches again? Is it turkey broth again, Mum? But we don't do turkey now because we have a nut roast. Although this year I'm doing a mushroom and camembert pâtissier, don't you know? Which will be very exciting. But I don't mind falling hook, line, and sinker for it, and it saddens me that my youngest, and it's not. They're not doing it to be cool. They're not doing it to be pesky or difficult. I think it's that they find it a bit overwhelming and find unnecessary pressure, and I get that, and I think that's a shame. But I also, I have mates who just go, "Oh, I hate Christmas," but and quite actually enjoy the process of the hating. So in fact, they're doing the Christmassy thing, but in their own kind of but I'm too cool for school kind of way. So I see you, but also I know there are people for whom it is a genuinely difficult and hard time where loss is magnified or loneliness is exaggerated and all of that, and I'm sympathetic to that. And I've had Christmases where I felt pretty abject because of things going on, but but even then I've tried to comfort myself in the familiar spoils, even when things were not great, I was at least could go, well, but at least I can bathe in the atmosphere being conjured by friends and loved ones. So I'm aware I may be a fool, but I'm a conscious fool that I like Christmas. I love everything that goes with it, and I like making the effort to try and make other people have a nice Christmas as well, and to provide as a grown-up to say, well, it's all right, we can have those things, and I've worked hard all year, I will go to the nice cheese shop up the road rather than get it from the co-op next door, and that sort of thing. Anyway, I have to choose 5 things I like about that. Oh my goodness. Well, I think the first one, which is a harder one maybe for me to remember, so I'm going to get it out of the way first. I love the fact that the twist on the Ghost of Christmas Future is that actually he's not showing the old man something, he's showing the young man the old man, and Scrooge himself becomes his own Ghost of Christmas Future. I think that's such a clever twist, and it's emblematic of Stephen Moffat and the way he writes and the way that he does things, and it's really well done, and the fact that obviously you've got such a great actor as Michael Gambon on the receiving end of it, and there is something, the juxtaposition of cruel, angry old man with old-fashioned pajama and dressing gowned kid. There's something so innocent about young children, so unspoiled, that adulthood is only going to ruin as we get exposed to real cruelty, because childhood stories are all those things that the big ogres and things you fear as a kid are eventually replaced. I know some people have terrible childhoods as well, I'm not undermining that, but the natural course of things is that the things that you're scared of as a kid from storybooks get replaced by more mundane but nonetheless palpable fears, like not being able to pay the rent, or losing a loved one, or just getting old, and suddenly that makes monsters and trolls seem seem actually much more attractive as fears, which is what draws us to programs like Doctor Who. But seeing a child with his older self, I think there's something so moving about that, because that of course comes to us all. It's not that death comes to us all, it's the gradual death comes to us all, that we age and that our childhood's innocence is chipped away, and we become craggy and broken and damaged, and all of those things that make us angry and that make us cruel and that make us unkind and that make us stubborn, and all of those things that you're not so much as a kid. And actually having those two things share the screen, which only a program like Doctor Who can do, and for it to make any sort of sense, is an excellent use of Doctor Who's format, excellent twist on the Christmas Carol, and an excellent part of the story. It's, I think, my favourite bit of the whole adventure. So well done, that. Number 2 is, I think, the Christmas atmosphere, and I will draw the lighting into that as well, because I think the lighting is always the lighting a separate one. Oh, I do think the lighting is superb in it. I think having, as I say, the different lighting states of Amy and Kazran, I think the lighting in the mausoleum is incredible, but also so is the lighting in the drawing room and of the outside. No, I'm going to give the lighting its own. I'm going to give the lighting its own entry. Actually, the lighting is superb, and I think the problem with lighting is that if it's really good, you shouldn't notice it. And I suppose I was only inclined to notice it because I'm trying to discuss things that make an adventure good. Yeah, I suppose the credit there has to go to the director of photography, Stephen Pearson. You don't have a lighting person in the same way as you might have done on the old BBC classic Doctor Who's, where you'd have Don Babbage would do the lighting, Duncan Brown or whomever. The cameraman lights their own shots. The director of photography with a crew. There's a whole sort of camera and lighting department. So I'll credit Stephen Pearson, the director of photography, and his crew. They all deserve great credit, I think, for the beautiful work in creating the atmospherics and feel of this particular episode. So the lighting is number 2. Number 3, it has to be Gambon, doesn't it? I mean, he's such an incredible actor. That craggy face, that beautiful delivery, the fact that he's perfect. He's so cruel, but then, the tenderness and the fragility just beneath the surface, and he straddles that so well that where it's always distinctly possible he's going to be one or the other, but as it goes on, he does sort of convince you, this is going to be too tough a nut to crack, but then it's totally convincing and believable when the nut is cracked, and you see the sad walnut underneath, the lachrymose walnut beneath. But yeah, it's such a strong performance. He's such a good actor, and will be in memoriam now, because we lost him. But what a terrific actor he was, and of course an actor of great meaning for me, because he was in The Singing Detective, which was all about a man stricken with psoriasis and stuck in hospital with psoriasis, which I have been, and when it was on was when I was experiencing the condition for the first time, or it was just after actually, but or was it? No, it might have actually been just before. But that's such a blight on my life, and so brilliantly performed and realised and written about in The Singing Detective, that I've always felt, Gambon's always been an actor that I've felt a real sort of connection with when I watch him. There are windows to his soul, and yet he makes it look so easy. You can't see any mechanics or pyrotechnics. I'm sure there is craft and skill and technique in there, but it just seems so effortless. My God. And yet real and full of depth and extraordinary. So Gambon is number 3. Number 4, the Christmassiness. This is important for a Christmas special, and it has that Dickensian stuff. It does very well. But I think the fact that it's Doctor Who Christmassiness, in that it is a Dickensian street, but it's got people with goggles on, but it's got a big building with a spire going up into space. It's got electronic control panels in that mahogany drawing room. It's the fact that it does an oldie worldy, snowbound Dickensian Christmas vibe, which is very important to me as part of the Christmas special. It has to feel Christmassy, and yet it's got enough in it that is Doctor Who-y to mean that it's not just an on the nose rehash of Dickens. It's got enough Doctor Who qualities to it to make it, a dissonant, a slightly skew-iff, a slightly perverted, visually slightly perverse, slightly dissonant, slightly, Doctor Who is all about juxtaposition. The traditional Dickensian Christmas juxtaposed with, outlandish sci-fi ideas. And number 5, I think because I'm conscious that I don't do this enough, I think it has to be Matt Smith as the Doctor. I think if I had to hone on a specific thing, I think it's Matt Smith's interaction with children. I talked about when he's doing the card trick, and he's being sort of incompetent, and when he's with the shark, and he has that childlike thing about him, which means that he could save the day or he could screw it up, and yet it never undermines the character. I've talked about all this when it was happening, but the Doctor's interaction with children, but the fact that Matt Smith is this child in a grown man's body and yet still manages to be the cleverest person in the room, is still insolent to the big threatening ogre of a man who owns everything. He's got that quiet danger as well, but is also scatty, eccentric, slightly incompetent, but also brilliant and smart and funny. And as a kid, it's so important to me that Doctor Who is good for kids. And I think the way that Stephen Moffat conceives the character as this, big overgrown kid in a man's body, which makes kids find him funny and safe and yet kind of unpredictable and dangerous at the same time, is a brilliant synthesis of all sorts of supposedly contradictory things that just somehow work. And again, that to me is the heart of what Doctor Who is and what it does well. So, The Ghost of Christmas Future. The lighting. Michael Gambon. The Christmassiness of it. And Matt Smith's Doctor, particularly Christmas with the Kids. So, what has Jason Thompson chosen?
Okay, my favourite things about A Christmas Carol. The first one is very simply Christmas. I love Christmas. I really, really loved having Doctor Who on Christmas Day, and I'm so pleased we're getting festive specials back again with Russell T Davies in the new era. But this one in particular is so Christmassy. It's like someone packaged up Christmas, tied it in a bow and stuck it in a 1-hour television show. It's just the design, the music. Obviously, the story is very heavily influenced by a previous Christmas story, but, this is so Christmassy, and I love that about this episode. It's my favourite of all the Christmas specials now. Some of them have been pretty good. Some of them have been kind of okay. And through the first Russell T Davies era, the Christmas specials, as they progressed, had less and less to do with Christmas until The End of Time Part 1 just happened to be on Christmas Day but didn't really have anything to do with Christmas at all. And then Stephen Moffat came in and went, no, we're doing Christmas specials properly, and just whacked Christmas all over this one, and I really, really love that.
Yeah, I chose Christmas too. I mean, slightly different. I mean, Jason's chosen Christmas full stop, I think, and how this fits in as a Christmas. But no, I think I did enough to say that it is Christmassy and what it represents at Christmas and all of that. No, I get a point for that. Is this going to be my Christmas present? Is that I will get more than 2 out of 5 of Jason's favourite things, which means I would win this edition of Happy Times and Places, which has only thus far happened once before. Right, let's see. Number 2.
My second favourite thing about A Christmas Carol is Michael Gambon. He's a great actor anyway, but in this one in particular, first there's something about his voice which I really like, but in this one he has the whole gamut of emotional states to run in what amounts to a few minutes of screen time. He starts off quite callous and blunt and cruel almost, but you still see elements of the nicer man underneath that the Doctor picks up on that prompt his change. And he gets to be sad, angry, defensive, happy, everything. And I think he does it absolutely brilliantly. So Michael Gambon is my second favourite thing about The Christmas Carol.
Brilliantly put, Jason, and I've already discussed why I think Michael Gambon is great, and that's 2 out of 2. So I only need one more. I mean, I've been in this position before, and and what usually happens is that the guest chooses something obvious that I think I should have chosen. And I'm going, why did I choose that thing? But why did I choose the lighting when I should have chosen the cool fish in the fog idea and realization of that, and the fact that it all ties in everything? But Gambon is great. It does amuse me on the Doctor Who Confidential when, they say to Michael Gambon, what made you want to do this? And he goes, oh, yeah, I was a fan. And loads of people went to the forums and went, so Michael Gambon's a fan, he's a celebrity fan. You go, no, he's, yeah. What he means was he quite liked Doctor Who. He's not a fan. He doesn't know who directed Creature from the Pit. And it amuses me when I see him added to the list of sort of celebrity fans. There are celebrity fans like Mark Gatiss and Frank Skinner and people like that, and obviously many who've gone to work on the show. But Michael Gambon is not one of them, in the same way that Peter Kay is not a Doctor Who fan. So people will say things to sort of go, yes, I appreciate this show, and this is the reason I'm giving on an electronic press kit about it. But these aren't people that then go and buy the Doctor Who Monster Vault. Do you know what I'm saying? So yeah, I think we need, perhaps in our gradations of what counts as a celebrity fan, a little bit more nuance and a little bit less credulity from the world of Doctor Who fandom. But anyway, he did have such a marvellous voice. What an excellent... Which is why it was a great use of having him. I'm sure it was written before he was cast, but having Kazran doing the voiceover at the beginning, when you've got such a wonderful voice man playing the part, it just seems like, well, of course the narrator is going to be Michael Gambon. But again, of course, the twist is he's not really narrating it. He's looking out the window, and he does a twist on the usual Christmas narration, which is a very witty and clever and engaging way of opening the story. Very good. It's so precisely, brilliantly done. There's nothing sloppy about this at all. It's forensically good. Why? Oh, yes, good. Well, this is ascended. All you have to do is come and watch a story again with fresh eyes, the treasures available. I'm so thrilled I've done this. I almost didn't have time to do this this year, but I wanted to do a Christmassy one for Christmas time, so I'm glad I've managed to squeeze it in. On Christmas Eve morning, I'm recording this.
My third favourite thing about A Christmas Carol is the sequence with the shark in the bedroom where it's eaten the sonic screwdriver and jammed its head in the door, where the Doctor is saying, concentrating on the positives, his screwdriver is within reach. And hopefully the door is wedging the shark's mouth open because, and this was the bit I actually really like, my favourite bit, I've only got 2 goes and then it's your turn. 2 goes, 2 arms, and in he goes. And I thought that was great at the time, really loved that. It sort of reminded me of the bit in Earthshock where the Doctor advises everybody to get away from the possibly booby-trapped hatch with the bomb behind it, and when they ask what about him, he's like, well, my arms are only this long, I can't get any further away. It's that kind of humour that appeals to me for some reason. Possible severing of arms appealing to me as humour. Yeah, let's not think about that too hard. But anyway, that was my third favourite thing about A Christmas Carol.
Yeah, it's true. And I think I was getting distracted talking about something else, probably talking about actors because I'm such a bore. But that is an excellent sequence, beginning from, who eats, what do you eat? And then it gets eaten. And it's the perfect use of the Doctor using humour to deflect from a very, very dangerous situation, especially because he's, trying to make the kid feel safe. And yet Moffat's so good at the jokes, so good at the humour. And the 2 arms thing is really, really funny, but also quite scary, and it's a perfect Doctor Who scene. That there's jeopardy, there's an imaginative creature that's pretty well rendered, there's strange juxtaposition, a shark in a bedroom. I mean, that's, you're just saying it out loud, you go, that is absolutely genius. That is so Doctor Who. And I was scared of Jaws as a kid, and I've been scared of the sea ever since. I'm not very brave in the deep ocean waters, or even the not very deep coasty waters, because of what could lurk beneath. And that film Jaws is entirely responsible for that. So I always find sharks a bit scary, and Moffat is very good at doing this. Gas mask, crack in the wall, statues, something familiar, scary, but giving it a Doctor Who twist. Sharks are scary. We're always a bit scared of sharks, my generation, because of Jaws particularly, and what that did, and the donut and the dorsal fin, and the shadow of the shark going past the camera early in that scene at the window. Very, very good. All of that used brilliantly, and sticking it in a kid's bedroom. Genius, brilliant, and he's good at children's bedrooms feature quite heavily in Moffat's Doctor Who, and having the twist of going, we're taking that scary thing from the sea and putting it in your bedroom, and then having you stuck in the wardrobe behind the door as it's attacking, and the Doctor, improvising, thinking quickly, but also trying to be reassuring by using humour. It's the perfect Doctor Who scene. And I think perhaps I should have chosen that. I mean, I did choose how Matt Smith behaves with the kids, but I was more thinking about the scene with the cards, wasn't I? I know I can't have that. I should have chosen that. That's a beautiful choice, Jason. You described it very well, and that is a perfect Doctor Who scene. It's so good.
My fourth favourite thing about A Christmas Carol is the sequence in which Kazran thinks that Abigail is going to kiss him, and he's not sure what to do, and it's the Doctor's advice that I particularly loved when he said, try to be all nervous and rubbish and a bit shaky, because you're going to be there anyway, you might as well make it part of the plan. And I thought that was great advice. Applicable to anyone in that situation, I feel. So that was my fourth favourite thing about A Christmas Carol.
That's good. And I was talking over that, but I do remember it from when I watched it the other day in preparation for this. Moffat is, as well as being sarky and quippy and good at structure and all those other things we think of it, he's extremely wise. There's so many aphorisms in his stories, but he's wise about the foibles, I think, of particularly Doctor Who-y kind of people, because he is that nerdy kid as well, who happens to have now become mega successful and who is also extremely smart. But for such a funny man, I think he is. He feels as awkward as the rest of us do, and yet he has the insight of a great writer. In that his Doctor Who is full of aphorisms like that. You're going to feel awkward when you're kissing somebody, that you may as well make it part of the plan. But again, he uses humour to deflect away from the things that hold us back or make us feel ashamed of ourselves or whatever, with great insight, but also great humanity, but crucially with great humour. And that's a terrific combination. But it does speak of greatly, and often he distracts us from this because he's so funny and so clever, of great sort of wisdom and empathy and empathy about our foibles. that he makes sort of charming and winning. And I think that's a great encapsulation of that, and a great choice, Jason. But I'm feeling victory slipping away from me like the gold in the van at the end of The Italian Job, which was also a film that I think about as being quite Christmassy, even though it's not. But it was always on at Christmas. And Jason's final choice, is it? Yes. Oh, choose. So he's got to choose either The Lighting, or The Ghost of Christmas Future, or Matt Smith, for me to be victorious, for me to get a Yuletide victory. Like the film Escape to Victory, which is also what I think of as a Christmas film, even though it's about footballers escaping from a POW camp, aided by Sylvester Stallone and Michael Caine. But Clive Merrison and Tim Pigott-Smith are in it as well, I think. So yeah, they were very Doctor Who-y. I was like, oh, Doctor Who.
My fifth and final favourite thing about A Christmas Carol, and I'm not doing these in order of preference because this is the moment I really loved, even right at the moment it was first broadcast. Show Me the Future.
Ah!
That whole sequence. Because we know the story of A Christmas Carol. The Doctor's done the Ghost of Christmas Past. Amy has been the Ghost of Christmas Present, showing him what's going on now. And it sort of turns the whole thing on its head because, immediately Kazran Sardik picks up on the plot and says, well, show me the future, I'll die cold and alone and afraid. So what everyone does. What's the difference? What's that going to do? And the moment where he says he doesn't care and dares the Doctor to prove him wrong. And he says, I am showing you the future. I'm showing it to you right now. And then his eyes flick over Kazran's shoulder and say, so what do you think? And we turn and there is young Kazran standing behind him. And that is just an absolutely superb moment. Really uses the whole time travel element of the show. And yes, okay, there was also an element of he's not paying any attention to the lore of the show because young Kazran and old Kazran hug each other, and shouldn't two people from different parts of their time stream short out some kind of time differential and cause a blast of energy that allows a bunch of immortal people to die or something along those lines. But I forgive all that because that moment is absolutely perfect. And I really, really love it. So that is my final and absolute favourite thing about A Christmas Carol.
I think you got quite emotional there, Jason, and I don't mind that because I did too. And hang on, though, headline news: I've won. I have won, but the second time only since Love and Monsters, I have successfully chosen the majority of the same favourite things as my guest. That's the best Christmas present I could have had. I am so used to failure. It's inbuilt. I've even created a podcast in which the likelihood of me winning is infinitesimally small. And I've won at Christmas. See? There's no cynicism necessary about Christmas. Beautiful things can and do happen at Christmas, and somehow, sometimes, Christmas contrives to make beautiful things happen, or it magnifies their beauty because it happens at Christmas time. If this had happened in March, I'd have been pleased, but if I'd done this while I was doing, Creature from the Pit, I'd have gone, oh, well, yeah, I've won, hooray. But I've won at Christmas. I've won with the Christmas Carol. I've evoked somebody from the past, because Jason recorded this a while ago, has done something with me in the present, which is going to be appreciated by people in the future, and also I've become a changed man because I approached this story having known that I'd always been a bit dismissive of it, not because I thought it was bad, but because I thought it wasn't necessarily to my taste and because it didn't do some of the things that the Christmas specials I'd rather watch do. But actually, now I associate Christmas less with, big action adventure-y disaster movie stuff and more with the sort of warm glow of a fireplace and this sort of Dickensian, sooty-faced, grubby, old-fashioned chestnuts on an open fire on an alien planet with fish clouds kind of vibe, which is equally festive and perhaps if not more so. And that scene is so good. It is such the perfect use of Doctor Who's format. And screw Mordrin Undead. You know what I mean? Who cares if some, if two people touching needs to short out a time differential to kill some men in dresses on trolleys with spaghetti heads. It also enables a wonderful senior actor to connect with his younger self in a if what you're thinking about there is that, hang on, how does this rationalize with Mordrin Undead and not this is a very beautiful moment of television and storytelling, then you need a visitor. I'm happy to be Jake, your Marley's ghost, and show you the error of your ways, because that's a choice. You have to, in the same way that one surrenders to Christmas, you have to surrender to storytelling, and that obviously it has to earn it, and it's not got to do anything too egregious to challenge your sense of reality, or to take too many liberties with logic or character or whatever. But with Doctor Who, watching Doctor Who is always full of those compromises, especially when it's to do with its history. And Doctor Who should never seek to deliberately contradict its history. I think that's annoying and that's pesky, and it should try where it can to rationalise it. But the storytelling must absolutely come first. And if it's something that might contradict something that's gone before, there's enough in there that you can sort of go, well, I could choose to ignore that, or I can rationalise it in my own head. It would be very boring if you then had to sit down and explain for 5 minutes why this wasn't a contradiction of Mordrin Undead. You've got to kind of do that work yourself. But if you're doing it whilst the tears are cascading down that brilliant actor's face, then you're looking at the wrong place. I love it. Thank you, Jason. Thank you for allowing me to win, but thank you also for allowing me to talk about what I think is one of the great scenes of Doctor Who. It's not a scene that actually works, that you can. I'm not sure you could take it out of context to go, right, watch this, everybody. Here's a great Doctor Who scene, in the way that you could with the shark, which is a great showpiece scene, because actually it's a culmination of the whole episode, and you need to have had what's gone before for that rug being pulled from under Kazran moment, and being pulled under Doctor Who and Dickens and the format. It's a rug that's got a lot of things on it that come a tumbling, including my losing streak. I have won, but let's allow Jason, who has contributed so well and kindly to this, his outro.
So I wonder how many of those you picked. I hope you did well, because in the spirit of Christmas, I'm going to hope that you win this. And thank you once again for inviting me onto your podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure. Bye for now.
Well, I didn't know you were going to say that, Jason, because obviously I don't watch the video until I record. But my goodness, your Christmas spirit has been answered, and I did win. So there we go. A Christmas miracle. My thanks to Jason Thompson. My thanks to you for listening. This will be released at Christmas time, so it's only appropriate, I think, that I say, and incidentally, Merry Christmas to all of you at home, but Happy Christmas to us all, to each and every one of us, but to you, and I do appreciate you listening to this. And if you're listening at Christmas time, I find that rather touching that I am part of your Christmas. Do you know what I mean? It's as somebody that talks out loud for a living, that some people might want to listen to it at an important and festive time when we seek out the things that we enjoy. Well, I'm grateful for being allowed into your homes. I'm grateful that there's enough of you out there that justify me doing this on Christmas Eve morning. But now I've got so much to do that I should have been doing. But it's been rewarding to be able to do Christmas-flavoured broadcast, especially one that I ended up winning. So God bless us, whichever God that is of yours, everyone, but especially listeners, to happy times and places. And the happy time is Christmas time, which is visiting all of your disparate places, and I hope in a benevolent and enjoyable way. Happy Christmas to you. Thanks for listening, and God bless. Well, ho, 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 and thanks very much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Haydock, with special guest Jason Thompson, to whom I'm extremely grateful. I'm also grateful to and send festive greetings to the patrons who make these podcasts possible, and they include Ruben Herfindahl, Stephen Moffat, not that one, Peter Burns, James Correa Smith, Peter Harness, yes that one, Ronald Hayden, Rob Leonard, Christopher Meredith, Gavin McLean, Richard Straw, Neil Tate, Nick Tedston, Tim Arding, Nigel Bromley, Paul Cook, Richard Chalk, Grant Davidson, John Deere, Chris Dunford-Kelp, Paul Dunn, Jason Gorman, Siobhan Galichan, Chris Hyam, Ian Key, Joe Llewellyn, Philip Barsh, Nathan Martin, Roland Moore, Rick Moran, Kevin Murdoch, Graham Knott, Adam Parker, Barry Platt, Risto Matti Cirillo and Frank Shales. The music is by Dave Gates, the artwork by Dylan Patterson. And thanks to all the patrons that weren't mentioned there. You get mentioned if you are a patron, the frequency of which depends upon the tier you are on. The lowest tier is £3 per month. For that, you still get mentioned on the end credits every now and again, and all of the other things that come with Patreonship, which includes bonus releases, early releases, exclusive material, and all sorts of other access, including monthly AMAs and pictures of my dog, which may not sound like the biggest enticement, but they do seem to have gone down very well. He's a lovely chap. But that's at patreon.com/Toby Haydock, where, as I say, for as little as £3 a month, you can help me to keep these professional, sounding good, and to give myself proper time to do them so that they are... Well, if you think this is any good, they are as good as this. If you think this isn't good enough, well, it could be better with more Patreonship. So either way, go to patreon.com/Toby Haydock and you get 10% off if you sign up for a year. But otherwise, it's a monthly commitment. If you can't handle a monthly commitment or don't like the idea of it or simply don't want to, that's fine. But if you want to support these financially now and again, you can do that by going to ko-fi.com/Toby Haydock, where if you're feeling so inclined or feeling particularly flush, or I sound particularly hungry or needy, or do a podcast that you particularly enjoy, you can pay in any denomination that you like. It's the way that the arts, if that's what this is, are subsidised these days, and there's no monthly obligation there. It's just a one-off that you can do, and it's like, they make it seem like you're pretending to buy a coffee, which seems far less grimy than what this is now, which is me soliciting for your hard-earned money. But the beautiful thing of these, the way that we do things these days, is that there's no obligation, and I'm simply grateful to you for listening. And if you do enjoy listening, what costs you nothing is to go to Apple Podcasts or iTunes or whatever it's called these days, and to give these a 5-star rating and a few lines of review. That really helps to make them more noticeable amongst the very overcrowded part of cyberspace where the Doctor Who podcasts live. And there's some very, very good ones out there, no less than those mentioned by Jason. So do check out those ones that he mentioned, because the Doctor Who podcast world is a rich and bounteous one. But as for my corner, yes, if you could give Happy Times and Places, which is part of Toby Haydock's Time Travels, 5 stars and good reviews wherever you can, that is really, really helpful. And if you could go onto cyberspace and social media and do that as well, it's just, it just means that more people get to listen to these, and the more people that do, the better use of my Christmas Eve it will have been. Talking of social media, you can follow me at Toby Haydock on X or Twitter. I prefer Twitter. I said X and hated myself for doing so. On Twitter, I'm not calling it X, and I'm having some opal fruits while I'm not calling it X. And I'm at Toby Haydock, and these podcasts have their own stream as well, which is at Haydock podcasts. And I'm also on Instagram at toby.haydoke. I'm trying to get better at Instagram. I'm doing videos and all sorts. And it's the way of things these days. So the more Instagram followers I have, the better for me. Because sometimes it could be the difference between getting a job or not. If you've got a decent amount of Instagram followers, I know that makes the world as evil as I think it's ever been. And no matter what else is going on in the world, there's some pretty parlous stuff. That, I think, is a sign of the destruction of mankind and its imminence. But there we go. And perhaps its deserved imminence. Anyway, nonetheless, I will still partake in it whilst aiding and abetting the destruction of my species by putting up pictures of me trying to be wise or funny. And that's at Instagram at toby.haydoke. And I've also got a Facebook page as well. So you can go to all those places. It just helps me feel like I'm not flinging stones at the moon, shouting in the dark or whatever. And of course, being Christmas, it'd be nice to just be halfway out of the dark. Okay, that's a long one, and it's Christmas Eve, and I've got loads to do, so you're not getting much of a pre-credits. And I've already ended by saying Happy Christmas, but I'd also like to say, as I'm recording this on a Christmas Eve, a happy birthday to John Levine, aka Sergeant Benton, because I'm always sympathetic to those whose birthdays are around Christmas time, because mine is a week after Boxing Day, and everybody always forgets, and that's not halfway out of the dark. It's very much everybody's either just gone back to work or they're still recovering from, because you recover from New Year's Eve on New Year's Day, but then you do your proper recovery on the 2nd, where nobody does anything at all, and especially what they don't do is come to my birthday. So I'm always very sympathetic to people who have birthdays around Christmas, and always try and make sure I give them an acknowledgement that isn't tied up with Christmas, because you wouldn't do that if somebody's birthday was in June. You wouldn't go, happy birthday, oh, and by the way, here's something about Christmas as well. So an individual, Christmas-free, festive best wishes to John Levine, whose birthday is on the 24th, my friend Simon Harris, my friend Lizzie Buse, my colleague George, various people I know who's... Bernard Padden Tylos from Full Circle, he's around. I think he's the 28th or 29th. There's loads of people I know and love. My friend Woody also, who's an assistant director on Corrie, also is January the 2nd, is my twin, but my younger twin by several years, actually. It's not really a twin. But anybody whose birthday is around Christmas time, I send individual Christmas-free felicitations for that special event, which deserves to be celebrated all on its own, and so frequently isn't. So never mind happy Christmas to each and every one of us. Happy birthday to you, the special you, the individual you, if your birthday is around Christmas time.